Chapter 4, Going Underground. Mo. My dad started in the mines when he was 13. That's all he ever done. They worked in their own coal mine. It's in our blood. It's in our blood, you know. My father's father owned his own mine for a while. He graduated from Carnegie Mellon. There were only like 14 of them ever graduated from there that were with a minor degree. He was one of them. And my father, he was in the mine when the Johnstown flood hit in 1977. And he come out of the mine hand over hand on a high voltage cable. The water was up to their necks and it was pouring in the mine. I remember him telling me a Doberman pinscher was dead, got its legs on each side of his chest, and he had to pull it off. My dad had about 43 years in the mines, and he's seen an awful lot. I remember when I was younger, about 10 years old, me and him went on to a hunting camp we have up north. I didn't understand what went on, but I remember Dad crying at night, and I didn't know why. I found out later that his helper got killed. That's why they gave him time off. To get away, you know? He was crushed. A roof fell. When I got older, Dad told me what he went through, crawling on top of rocks looking for his helper, trying to see a light. So you can imagine what that did to him. And he lost a lot of friends, guys who worked beside him. This guy was his helper for 12 years. My dad spent more time with him than he did his family. First time I went into a mine, I was 5 years old. Don't remember much except that it was dark. When we filled out a thing in high school, what did you want to do after you graduate? I wrote down, I want to be a coal miner. How stupid is that? My dad got me the job. As a matter of fact, my dad ran the miner and told the owners that if they didn't soon give me a job, he would slow them down. He said, you're going to get less coal until you get my boy on. Unger. I grew up on a farm, and it was hard work. I figured I'd try something else for a while. So after I graduated high school, I was a rowdy kid. I had various jobs and ended up working as the assistant produce manager at a grocery store. It was a fine job, but it was giving me an ulcer, and I wasn't making any money. By that time, I was married to Sue, and we had a child on the way. The best paying job I could find was in the mines, and I thought, hell, why not? I'll just do it for a little while, then quit in. It was hard to see anything like it. You looked at it and you thought, well, no real big deal. This don't look that bad. The roof was high when we went in, so they could haul supplies in and out. It was about 5 or 6 feet. I thought, well, this is nothing. But then we went up into the face, an actual working section. It was 28 inches high. I looked at this and I'm thinking, holy balls, this is bad. I thought, well, hey, I'll try it. If I can do it, I can do it. If I can't, I can't. I have to do something, and this pays $50 a day. So I worked there a couple days, and there was this guy. He was a foreman. Oh, he just cursed and swore all the time, and he called me Walt instead of my name, John. Every day he called me Walt. I said, who are you talking to? And he said, you, Walt. I worked with a bunch of experienced guys. I mean to tell you, you talked about a beating. They were on you every day. I mean, every day, man. They were screaming at you. Whatever you did was wrong. It didn't matter if it was right. It was wrong. I just made up my mind I could do this. I could really, really do this. And I started there in December of 1974, and I told my wife, as soon as I get enough money to build a house, I'll quit. I have to have, I think, $5,500 for the down payment. So I worked a bunch of overtime. I bought a new rifle because I wanted to buy a good gun, a Remington 270, and then the rest of it I saved for the house. But I had to have $5,500, and then things were moving right along there, and I didn't quite have enough. So her grandfather loaned me the money to finish what I needed to do so we could get a house because he wanted us to have our own place. So we built a house in 1976, and things were going pretty good. Bought some cars, stuff like that. Even though I said I was going to quit, I never did. Then I got the chance to buy my farm in 1980. It was a place I'd always dreamed of owning since I was a kid. 84 acres. Bought some cows, and then we thought about farming, and I wanted to milk cows. I figured farming was a better life after all. I was still working in the mine, and I enjoyed it, you know. I don't think I could have just went if it was just a paycheck. It was something I really felt good at. But I always, in the back of my mind, I always wanted to get out. But I never did because I knew I couldn't make a living farming. Blaine. I'm not from a coal mining family. My father worked in construction. I was born in Baltimore, but moved to Somerset County when I was 7. I was a wild boy. I didn't get into a lot of trouble, but I was ornery. I spent a lot of time in the woods up behind our house, making beer and tracking animals and playing poker with my friends. I played a lot of baseball. In high school, I had an 80-mile-per-hour fastball and breaking ball that dropped like 2 feet. After high school, I enlisted in the Navy. Spent 9 months at sea during Desert Storm on the USS Seattle, a combat support ship. I was a petty officer 3rd class. I thought about going for the SEALs, but that didn't work out. When I was discharged, I went to work for a company in Meyersdale making tabletops. Then I did construction for a while, but that didn't pay nothing, and I had no insurance. By that time, Leslie and I was married and she was in nursing school. I worked for a company called ChemLawn for about 3 years. I enjoyed that, driving around, spraying people's lawns and whatever, but it was only $8.10 an hour and I was laid off most of the winter. When my kids were born, I wanted my wife to quit working so many hours. She works at a nursing home here in town and spend more time with them. My father-in-law, Tom, said he could get me on in the mines. I'd been trying for years, but no luck. But Tom helped me out. That was about 5 years ago. I'm a big guy for the mines. I'm 6 foot. So I had to stoop a lot and was down on my hands and knees. In the first month I started, my whole body ached and burned. But I really didn't mind the work, and I liked having health insurance, and I liked the bonuses we got for loading extra coal. But it takes a toll on your body. I had to have a cortisone shot a few months ago. My arm was hurting me so bad from running the controls on the scoop all day long. I couldn't even throw a baseball with my son. It was hurting so bad. Randy. My grandfather and his brothers had a mine. It's been in my family for a lot of years. It's got to be in your blood. If it ain't, you might as well forget it. I don't do it for the money. Everybody has got to live, and you do it to support your family and that kind of stuff, but it has to be something else. After high school, I worked on a farm for a while, but then I went to a strip mine. A short time later, I went underground. I didn't have no kids or nothing, and the money at the mine was much better. Annette, my wife, tried to talk me out of it. Her grandfather had died in the mines when her grandmother was pregnant with her father. But I told her the mines these days are much safer than they used to be. The first mine I worked at was rough. It was wet. There was a lot of bedrock in it. The first month or 2 I was there, we had a cave-in and buried some machinery. The roof was real bad. Lots of water coming out of it. I almost got killed working there. Big rock fell out of the roof and I got slammed. I was dazed. I didn't even know where I was at. I went right back to work. I had nightmares about it later. I liked being underground. In all these years, I never broke nothing. Never cut nothing off. For me, there's a lot of pride that goes with working in the mines. I mean, it's something you do well. You don't want to ever say you play a game with this, because coal mining is serious business. But it's Mother Nature you're messing with, and it's you and her. That's one of the challenges. You're playing against a force that is awesome. You can never control it because it's bigger than you are. I mean, she's wicked. Chapter 5, Battle on the Beltway. After the water broke through, Flathead was the first guy to head down the Beltway, with Blaine following close behind. It is no coincidence that the 2 youngest men on the crew, both with young children, were also the 2 men most desperate to get out. Flathead. As I headed out, there was not much water in the Beltway at first. It was all rushing down the entry beside us. I thought we still had time, but as we got further down, we started wading through water, chest high, and it was moving fast. I jumped on the belt and started going down that way, but that was too slow for me because I was so wound up. I wanted to get the hell out of here. So I jumped back into the water and held onto the belt and just waded through as fast as I could. Blaine. I was like 100 feet or so behind Flathead. I knew we didn't have much time. We had to get to the mains before the water closed it off. I wasn't thinking about nothing but getting out of there. A couple of times during this, I lost my helmet. It was so tight in there, it had bumped the roof or whatever, and it fell into the water. If I'd have lost that, I'd have been in trouble. It was the only light I had. I'm like, please, no, don't let my light go out. Hound Dog. I was holding onto the belt structure going down through there. The water was really swift. It almost knocked me off my feet, and it was getting higher and higher as we went down through, and I couldn't keep my feet no more. A couple times I slipped and I did go under. Eventually, I climbed up on top of the belt and started crawling. The water was up to the top of the belt. I could see the other guys' lights out ahead. They were crawling on the belt ahead of us. There were still guys behind us coming too. Harper and Randy Fogel, and I don't know who else for sure. There were places where the mine dipped down and the belt got fairly close to the roof. You had to get off your hands and knees and actually lay flat and just shimmy through because the belt was that close to the roof. But as you're crawling down through there, the water is raging down. It's hitting the belt, splashing up on you. You're breathing it, choking, coughing. It was brown water. I don't know why, but it was brown, and it was rising fast. Randy. After I left Mo, I was the last one to head down the beltway. I had to do some hustling to catch up with the other guys, and that's when I started feeling my heart pounding. It was hard work, fighting the water. I mean, it was as high as our belt, and you're stooped over and you're trying to run, and the air is getting bad. I decided the best way was to just float along with it. I could hang on the side of the rail and just let it take me down. Harpo. At that point, I look back and I see a light. I hollered, "Who is that?" Randy says, "It's me, Randy." "Come on, Randy, let's go. Hurry up. Come on." I waited for him. He gets close enough to me. I see he's all right. We moved on. The water is trying to take me. I'm hanging on to the belt structure. The water is just trying to take my feet out from under me. I holler back at Randy, "Randy, I'm not going to make it. I ain't going to make it." Then I feel his hand behind me. Randy grabs me by the back of my coveralls and literally throws me up onto the belt. Saved my life. Flathead. There's one low spot in the mine, a place where the coal seam just kind of dipped. And when I hit that section, suddenly the water was completely up to the roof. There was no way that I would even think about trying to swim through it, because the current was so fast and you don't know how far you would have to swim or what you would get into on the other side. I was really getting scared now. I just yelled back to Blaine, "Turn around, we can't go no more." I heard Blaine yell, "You sure? You sure?" And I said, "No, we can't make it." And he said, "Well, what are we going to do?" And I said, "We're going to have to go back." Blaine, I didn't want to turn around, but we had no choice. We'd been traveling with the water going down. Now we had to fight it back up, and it was still rising. As we was coming back, we all got bunched up, and my father-in-law looked at me with the most serious eyes. I mean, you could just see it in his face. He was scared to death. He said, "We're in trouble." Boogie. I seen Tucker was ahead of me, and he said, "We got to turn around. We can't go that way. We can't go this way." Oh, shit. That's the first time I knowed we may be trapped. We got to go back. So these guys start coming back, and we're all in the belt trying to crawl like army men. I had blood flying from my knuckles. I remember the blood coming up from holding my hammer, grasping it and hitting the coal as I was coming up the belt line. I was afraid the belt line was going to flip over and we were all going to drown. Hound dog. Going back up that beltway was just like trying to run upstream in a river. You're fighting it all the way. Your muscles and your legs and everything is so tense. I mean, you know, all it took was one slip. That water was raging wild. One slip and it would have took you off your feet and you'd have been gone. Blaine, to be honest with you, at one time, when I was along the belt there, I was tired and beat up. And for just that split second, I said, "Blaine, let's just let go. Let it take you." It would have been so easy. I ain't lying. My arms, I could barely lift them up. I mean, it was like jello. And I'm pulling all I have to get through. At this moment, it was all fatigue. It wasn't fear. But then I got mad at myself. I said, "God damn it, I'm not going to die." I told myself, "Pull it together. You got a wife. You got kids. There's still a chance." Eventually, all the guys made it back up the beltway far enough that they were more or less out of the water. They were exhausted, but safe. Hound dog. As soon as we got off the belt, Randy wondered if Mo had gotten out. I said, "I don't know. I haven't seen him." And Unger said the same. Now, I don't know if he got in contact with those other guys that was ahead of us going down the belt, if he had talked to them or not, but I know he asked, "Do you know where Mo is?" I said, "No, I didn't see him." He said, "Boy, I hope he's all right." I said, "Well, maybe he's ahead of us." John said, "I don't know where he is either." With the beltway flooded, their only chance now was to try to go out the air return, the partially walled-off passage where the circulating air returns from the mine to outside. I told them we had to try it, Randy said. What else were we going to do? Initially, they didn't hit much water. They could hear it rushing all around them, but the return itself was protected by the walls and was drier than the beltway. As they traveled farther down, the water had blown some doors open. The water started to rise to their waists. Finally, after scrambling about 1,000 feet down the entry, they reached a concrete block wall that cut directly in front of them. On the other side of that wall was the mains, and possibly a way out. Randy. I started beating on the block, and it just wore me out. And they yelled at Flathead and jumped in and started, and then somebody else started beating on the wall, and then finally I got a little bit of one block out, and boom! The water was over our heads right now. It was just pressure from that side to this side changed, and it just buried us. Hound Dog. I asked Randy what we're going to do, and he just said, "The water's got us. We're not getting out of here." I mean, everybody knew it. There was no other way out. The Call. Chapter 6. Annette Fogel is a big reader. The modest house she shares with Randy and their kids, Brittany, 15, and Stephen, 20, their son Matthew, 21, lives on his own, is stuffed with books, Lonesome Dove, beach music, and lots of Tom Clancy, Randy's favorite. In fact, if you didn't know better, you might mistake her for the local librarian. She's 40, calm and thoughtful, with short brown hair and glasses. Annette knows mines as well as she knows books. Her grandfather was crushed to death in one in 1938, just as her grandmother was about to give birth to her father. Because of that, her father never worked in the mines. He drove a tar truck. She remembered a nursery rhyme her grandmother taught her when she was a little girl. My sweetheart's a mule in the mine. I drive him all day without lines. On the bumper I sit, while tobacco I spit, all over my sweetheart's behind. She first met Randy when he was working on the farm where she lived. He was setting fence posts. Her mom looked out at him and said, "That would be a good man for you." Annette was 14 years old at the time. Randy was 18. She wasn't allowed to date until she was 16, but after that they didn't waste any time. They got married when she was 17, 2 weeks after she graduated from high school. Annette Fogel. Randy and I had a fight that morning. I won't talk about it, but he gave me a kiss before he went to work and told me he loved me. I didn't tell him that I loved him, something I regretted later on. He turned and looked at me before he walked out the door, and it was a look that I carried with me for the next couple of days, because it was a strange look. I didn't think anything of it then, but I did later on. That night I was doing something that, well, in retrospect, it's an odd coincidence. I was in the dining room using the computer. I was online playing a game called Noah's Ark. It's a game where you have to put animals 2 by 2 into the ark before the floodwaters come up. If the waters get too high and the boat is about to float away, there's a red thing that flashes and warns you that the floodwaters are coming. It was 5 after 11 when the phone rang. It was just Brittany and me here at the house. My son Steve wasn't home yet. And if the phone rings here after 11, I think, well, either it's Stephen or there's some kind of problem. You know, somebody's sick. Brittany answered the phone. She said, "Mom, it's for you." And I asked her who it was, and she said, "It's a salesman." I thought, 5 after 11 is a salesman? So I got on the phone, and the state trooper introduced himself, and I almost said, "Well, what did Stephen do now?" He said there had been an accident in the mine, and that there were some men unaccounted for, and they wanted the families to come to Sipesville, to the fire hall if they wanted to. He couldn't tell me any details. From there, my mind was a blank. I don't remember a thing he said after that. Missy Filippi, 34, has a tattoo of a vine wrapped around her left ankle. She's blonde, outspoken, and tough as Pennsylvania steel. You don't mess with Missy. She and John, Flathead, live in a small barn-shaped house with their 12-year-old son, Christopher. Talking to Missy, you get the feeling she knows what it's like to lose the things you love, and she's fiercely protective of her husband and family life. Like Annette, Missy was sitting at her computer, going online when the call came from the state police. Missy Filippi. When I called the mine, Dave, the mine clerk, picked up the phone. "I know, Dave." I could hear his voice shaking. I said, "This is Missy Filippi. I was told to call the mine. There was an incident." He said, "Yes, ma'am. There's been an accident. You're to go to Sipesville Fire Hall, and they'll give you more details there." I said, "Wait a minute. An accident? What do you mean? Was there a cave-in?" "No, ma'am," he said. So I said, "Are they trapped?" "Yes, ma'am." And I said, "Is it bad? You have to tell me." He said, "Yes, ma'am, it's bad." I said, "Is John in there?" He said, "Yes, ma'am, we think so." And about that time I look over and my 12-year-old son Chris was standing in the hallway. And Chris goes, "Mom, what is going on?" And I'm like, "I don't know, Chris. Something happened at the mine. Your dad is trapped." John Unger swears he knew he wanted to marry Sue as soon as he set eyes on her in the first grade. "It was her long pigtails," John says. "I think I was in love with her from the get-go." You can see why. She's a small but forceful woman, with short, dark hair and large eyes that radiate inner strength and good humor. She was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1987, and although she must use a walker to get around, she remains determinedly independent, driving herself around town back and forth from her job at a local church. She and John have 2 kids, Ed and Vicky. Sue Unger. About 11 p.m. that night I was pretty tired. I decided to take a shower. I went into the bathroom and the news was on, and I thought I heard them say something about the company that runs the Quecreek mine, Black Wolf, and I thought, nah, I'm hearing things. And that last part was miners trapped. And again I thought, nah. Then when I got out of the bathroom, there was a message on the machine from the state police asking me to call the mine. I had to look the number up in the book. When I reached them, they told me that John was trapped. I said, "By himself or with other people?" They said, "No, the whole crew is there." They told me to go to the Sipesville firehouse, where they'd keep me informed about what was going on. So I got myself ready and I drove down there. When I arrived, I didn't know how to get into the building. There was no handicapped entrance that I could see, so I stood outside. All the windows were open and I could hear them talking in there, so I just stood there and listened for a while. Then one of the chaplains who was there came out and wanted to know if I wanted to come in. I said, "Yes, if there's a way I could get in." He goes, "Walk the whole way around and you can get in back." So I went in, and I sat there all night waiting. One of the miners who had been on the other crew, the crew that escaped, was there, answering phones and trying to keep us updated. His name was Doug Custer. I felt so bad for him. I could see him when he'd answer the phone, and just by the look on his face, I was trying to decide if it was good news or bad news. There was only one time I really thought it was bad news, because his face just dropped. He was running his hands through his hair, and I thought, oh, this is it. But I think now it was just what he was so overwhelmed because there was nothing he could really tell us. He just hung up the phone and said, "The situation is still the same. They really don't know where they are or what's really going on." At that point, they didn't even know if they were alive. But then I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't watch his face anymore when he answers the phone. Leslie Mayhew was the only family member in double jeopardy during all this. Both her husband Blaine and her father, Tom Tucker, were working in the mine that day. I had everything at stake, Leslie says. My past and my future. She and Blaine live in a small town in Myersdale, 20 miles from the mine. It's just down the street from the house Blaine grew up in, and where his parents still live. Leslie, a bright-eyed, animated woman who loves to blast heavy metal rock, Def Leppard, Metallica, around the house, works every other weekend as a licensed practical nurse at a local nursing home. She and Blaine have 2 kids, Kelsey 7 and Tyler 8. Leslie Mayhew. When I got to the firehouse, all I knew was that there had been a mine accident and water was coming in, and it's a lot of water. But there is some good news. Half the guys got out. And I said, "Half of them got out?" I realized he was talking about the guys in the other part of the mine. But I still wasn't sure if Blaine and my father were down there. Finally, when Dave Rebuck, the contractor who was running the mine, came in, he just said some of them got out and some didn't. I was like, "Just tell me. I want to know. Are Blaine and my dad in there?" But he wouldn't say. He just put his head down and walked by me. I was right at the door because we needed fresh air. I said to my mom, "I want to ask him. I have to know. I can't take this uncertainty." So I went up to him. I was pretty upset and I said, "Are my dad and Blaine down there?" I wanted an answer. And he couldn't tell me yes, but he nodded his head. Of course I lost it and I went in and told my mom, "It's them." At least I knew, because otherwise I would have spent the whole night looking out at this hillside, waiting for Blaine to come walking muddy, wet, right up to me.